Hey guys, welcome back to Warren C Street Photography Podcast. In this podcast, for those of you who follow it and on my channel, you know that I talk about things in and related around street photography, but I'm usually talking about stuff based off of my opinion of it, getting you to really kind of want to talk about, think about, and have a conversation about it. So, as you guys know, I did not get to last month's podcast because it just got crazy again with work. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about in this episode. And I'm going to look to try to do two this month to get back on track as well. But in this episode, I've gotten some comments recently on some of the stuff on my channel, particularly with this podcast. And it had me thinking already before that about the content and whether you guys like it, and also looking at the feedback I get on the channel when it comes to folks feeding back on this podcast. And I have to tell you right now, guys, I said this on one of my videos before, is I love the feedback, negative or positive. What I don't like is if you're going to give feedback, especially if it's feedback that you may think I might think is negative, give me more than just, I don't think this is worth it. Tell me what you think you would like to see to make it worth it for yourself. I think that's good constructive feedback. So recently with one of the feedbacks I got, the person thought the channel was not worth it. And I'm like, hey, that's great, because at the same time, I've had people tell me that they think that what I do here in some of the segments is good. So it did have me think, because feedback is feedback, that I wanted to look at what I'm doing with this podcast as I look at my screen and go through my notes here, and what I want to go doing forward with this podcast, with the rest of the episodes for this season, and then, and further on beyond. And I want to say utmost and foremost right now is that I want to spark conversation. So I want to get you guys to talk about what I talk about on this channel, but I do want to talk about the things you feel that's important to you in and around photography itself. Street photography can be a little bit limiting. So I think going forward, I'm going to open this up to it being more of a general photography discussion. I still will probably have more of a focus on street photography, but in general. And I do understand the commenter's statement. They want it to be more informative. Now, again, most of this was opinion based on what I wanted to talk about, my opinions on it, my thoughts on it, and to get you guys' thoughts on it in the comments. So I still want that to happen, but I will look to see, and it's something I've been thinking about, to give more content that could be informative and help you in your photography. I've been doing photography enough, and I do understand that. I did feel, though, there was enough channels out there that did that, and they weren't podcast videos, they were just videos. So that's, again, why I'm still going to stick to definitely giving you my opinion, and what you may not like. I understand, and that's nothing wrong with that. But tell me why, again, you didn't like it, and let's have some good conversations. One of the other things I was thinking about doing is maybe making this podcast a live podcast where I go through the topics and discuss stuff real time with the community. So if you like that, or would like to see this maybe become a live episode where I go through the topics and folks that join on and get their input right then and there on the spot, let me know. I would love to do that. I've always wanted to do live sessions on my channel, but I couldn't quite get a feel of what to bring to you guys that you would want to discuss live with me when it comes to photography, street photography and stuff. So let me know about that. So with that, I do want to go over at least some things that I think folks have liked a lot on the channel. On when it comes to this podcast, which is who you're repping, which is the gear talk. And I want to definitely go through that to give you guys a taste of that. And then based off of the responses I get between now and we'll say a couple of weeks before the end of the month, what you guys feel about what I want to do differently with the podcast, the next podcast will incorporate that. Okay. So if everybody's good with that, drop your opinion in the bottom. Again, I don't care if it's a negative or you feel it's going to be a negative opinion or comment. Let me know. That's what the goal of this podcast is for For the folks who are listening to the audio piece of this, same thing. Go hit my Instagram. It's Warren CO1 on Instagram. Hit me on Instagram. Hit me with a message. Let me know, hey Warren, I listen to your podcast from time to time, or I've listened to it once, and this is what I feel about it, and this is what I would like to see you possibly do. That would be great as well. So with that, this is going to be a quick one because I just want to make up for what I didn't get to last month for the folks who do listen to the podcast regularly, and I have a few of those folks, which is great. I love that you guys do, and I love that you're part of the community. I really appreciate you guys. We're going to start off with trending, and that's what I usually do on the podcast, is start off with trending. But when I look at what's trending and the things I want to discuss with you guys last month and then discuss with you this month is what is it? What is it with everyone and the whole, hating on new cameras when they come out, to only turn around and be an advocate of the camera after they either seen more people provide content about it to get a better understanding of it, or they may even get it in their hands themselves. So why is that a trend that I see and I wanted to discuss that because, there've been a lot of recent cameras that have come out that, in my opinion, I think it's best, as a person who shoots, as a person who's been paid to shoot, it's best to get that camera in hand before you come to a true understanding of whether that camera is good for you or not. I know that we rely on a lot of YouTube reviews these days because that's pretty much where all the reviews are being done now. It's easier, cheaper for the brands to do that and get brand sponsors to talk about their gear and give you their feedback. A lot of them I appreciate. I think they give really honest reviews, and I try to do that myself too with the gear that I get. Now, when it comes to cameras, I've purchased all my cameras, right? So I've had to rely on those, and I've had to go in and touch and feel this camera. And in some cases, I've actually rented the camera if I could. Why are more people doing that? Why do we get to the point, or have gotten to the point, that I see some of these comments, some of the feedback people are giving, lasering these camera brands on what they've done to only turn around later and be like their biggest fan for that product? For instance, I just recently picked up some gear. If you follow my YouTube channel, I've got more Leica gear. I've got more Fuji gear. I've been able to do a collaboration on my channel with Sure on a lens for the Nikon camera I have. I shoot multiple brands because I've checked them out. In cases where I could rent them, I rented them to see if they were right for me. I didn't just immediately form an opinion based on seeing it, right? So I just want to know what you guys' thoughts are on that. Do you think that's something that, I think it needs to end? I think it really needs to end. I think folks need to really do a better job before they do their opinion based off of seeing something, to wait for either them to get it in their hands or a reviewer that they really rely on and they feel that gives an honest review of the products based on the way they plan on using it. And the way the Fuji, Leica, Nikon, Sony, Canon, OMS systems, I mean, you can name them all. They release a camera and it's like Shark Fest on them beating up that camera for every reason possible, until finally some reviewers that you, again, think honestly of, that gives an honest opinion, gives a review on it, and you're like, oh, okay. So there you go. That's that one. I hate the trend that's out there of bashing first and then learning about it later and then deciding that, oh yeah, it is actually pretty good. We all know that there will be no camera gear or camera specifically that'll meet all of our needs. If you shoot, and I mean seriously shoot, like you go out, you understand that nothing is perfect, that you got to work around that limitation, and that forces you to think about what you're doing and to get the content that you want to get. You know that in a lot of cases when something's released, it's just a bunch of noise. I'm tired of the noise. Let's be more honest with ourselves and our feedback on that situation, let's let that part start to die off. I think it's just a waste of energy personally. So there you go. The trend I don't like is the bashing of new gear before people get it in their hands truly and start to analyze it. Sigma BF is another one, right? You can form your opinions on it, but let's hold off the bashing until we actually see some people get it in their hands and can give us a really good review on it and see how it can fit for you. Enough of that nonsense. Honestly, I want to get into the next topic because the next topic is one that I myself have liked from the very first time I put it on there, and that is who you're repping. And I'm going to go to my notes because there's some good reasons I want to bring this book to you guys so that you can benefit from it the way I have. As you know, as a street photographer, one of the things that I personally look to do when I go out in the street is capture whatever's going on the street, candid photography. I like pictures of people too, so I like street portraiture as well. And then at the same time, the other top reason people go out to take images in the street is the architecture, the geography of the area that they're in, the beautiful buildings, the sharp angles, the different colored glass and stuff like that you see on buildings, the architecture, the period architecture you may see in cities like Detroit when I go down to Detroit and so forth. But there is one component that I particularly like to capture because I shoot a lot of images of people is, and this book nails it. I'll start with the book first. It's called Street Unicorn. And I'll go into in a second. You can see from the cover exactly what's happening there. And this book is by Robbie Quinn. And as I read my information on Robbie Quinn is an award-winning New York-based commercial photographer specializing in environmental portraits. And he went out and did this wonderful book. Then in this wonderful book, he did just that. He captured portraits of people, but interesting looking people, but not the everyday person going to work or going to get their coffee or just milling about in the street doing their thing. Nothing wrong with that, especially if you can get an interesting angle on that person where you can get an interesting point of view. There you see a good section of light, you're fishing, sitting in that spot, waiting for somebody to come through that light and complete that picture. These individuals, these street unicorns, which is why this book is named perfectly, are those that they don't need any light. They don't need shadows to help them. They stand out. They're the picture. They're the subject, and anything around them is just, it's not going to help. They are the image, distraction, whatever you want to call it, but they are part of the scene, part of everyday life, but you don't see them too often. So like here, even in these images right here, the way the gentleman's are dressed, they will make for fantastic photos, and they know it, and they will absolutely stop and pose. This book is littered with wonderful images of, as they state, street unicorns. And I am happy to have this book a part of my collection. As I walked around in a big city, like when I was in New Orleans a few weekends back, there were plenty of street unicorns, and I felt like I was in, street photography heaven. How often do you run across a street unicorn? If you do take images of people in the street, for someone who might be a little timid about approaching people in the street, this book will definitely help you understand how street unicorns want that attention and make it easy actually for you to approach them and ask for an image. They're going to want to see that image. They're going to want you to send it to them. That could be one of the best interactions that you can have on the street as a person who's looking to capture people or do actual street portraiture of people on the street is to find the street unicorns. And they come however they come, but they are different and you will know it. They do their best to stand out and they want attention. This is no different than going to, say, like a parade or something like I did recently in downtown Ann Arbor with the festival parade. People were dressed up in lively costumes. You had paper mache type mannequins that people were operating. So yes, that is, but the whole street was littered with them because of the parade. These are individuals that they're their own parade, and Mr. Robbie Quinn captures this awesomely in this book. I think this book, for anyone that shoots street and shoots particularly people in the street portraitures, would love that. I think you would love this book as part of your collection. And he uses color to bring out all of the color and emotion that person is also bringing to the table when they walk out the door for that image. I mean, look at this image. Now, where would I have to be? And let me make sure the light's not on there. Where would I have to be to get an image like that? For me, of course, it'd be Detroit. I could be in Ann Arbor as well. So I have two small to larger cities around me where I could definitely capture some street unicorns and be able to enjoy that experience that he shows in this book so nicely. I mean, bold, expressionist of styles, and that's usually what it is. You know, when you go to a place like New York City, you know, you have Fashion Week where people will be walking on the street and dressed like street, you know, they'll be your street unicorns, I should say, because of the way they're dressed and so forth. But as big as a city as New York is too, you'll have normal, everyday street unicorns doing their thing, going to work. So I'm representing Mr. Robbie Quinn with this book because when I saw it, as I was getting my next collection of books to not only bring to you guys to see if you might be interested in checking them out, learning some things from them, learning about how that photographer went about shooting these images in their style, you know, also seeing about what they've done, but seeing how you can apply that to your own street photography style to improve it. Now, as I've always done with the books and as I've always done with the Who You Reppin' people, I look at it and see how I would, you know, can break the book down and see how they went about getting the images. And for me, for Mr. Robbie Quinn, you know, the key is you have to have the right personality, approachable personality, attitude at the time to be able to approach anybody, even street unicorns, to get the images, because he is asking for that image. He is approaching them, asking for that image, and you have to be ready for that. And again, a lot of the times the best way to do that is to start slow. Maybe hit something like a parade or something where people are expecting to get images taken of them to make it easier to be able to take an image of them. Get that eye contact right away, smile on your face, come off literally, seriously unthreatening. And that person will, you could tell from their expression and body language that they'll want to deal with you and want to get that image with you and have some fun in that experience. And, you know, ask that person about the outfit, ask that person about the things that drew you to them to open them up and let them be more receptive to you being able to take a picture of them. And you would also be able to capture wonderful images like Mr. Robbie Quinn did in this book, you know. So there you go. That's who we repping, Mr. Robbie Quinn. And if I look at this right, I want to say we're going to say he's out of New York. He is active on Instagram. And as I go to his website, he does have things on his website that he's doing. This book I actually got this book off of Amazon, so it is still there for sale for you guys that want to know. He has his gallery and his portfolio on the website and so forth. But I personally always like to connect to folks on their Instagram because I get to see the continued work that they're doing. And it helps motivate me. So that's another big part of why I like to see if these folks have continued activities they're doing so I can continue to follow their work and grow from the experience that they're providing me as a photographer, right? Doesn't matter how long you've been shooting, you can always learn. So there you go. Who you repping? Mr. Robbie Quinn, New York street photographer, commercial artist. And I think this book is a wonderful collection of his work. As we go to the next part, which is gear, I'm gonna keep gear short because I don't know if this is one that I'll keep going forward in the podcast. And I know I've talked about some interesting things with gear, but I think I'm gonna focusing more on photographic techniques and styles that you can do and how you would use your gear to do that. So it sounds like, again, something that I think you guys would want to hear more about than just me talking about the gear itself. So when it comes to gear this time, I honestly can say, you know, I picked up a new camera Yet again, gas is real. And what is it? Well, you guys know I shoot GFX format with Fuji. So that's their medium format sensor cameras. I shoot it for mostly the paid work I do. But I recently did, yes, pick up the GFX100RF. And you're gonna ask, the biggest question people have asked when looking at the folks that got a chance to review this camera and go to Prague and all of that, that wasn't me. I bought this camera with my own money, like I've done all my GFX gear that I have. They asked, why would a person want this camera? Who is this camera for? And I can honestly say, if you are a person that already is in a medium format shooting arena, so you shoot GFX, you shoot Hasselblad, this camera's for you. If you are a person that likes to shoot high fashion detail and you want something that's a grab and go that's going to give you the high detail you want in an image, you now have that in a smaller form factor like the GFX 100RF to be able to go out and capture that high detailed information on a smaller ergonomic camera, reminiscent of an X100 series camera that's an APS-C, but with a bigger, more powerful sensor on it. Yes, the lens is an f4, but I was able to get some nice blurred out backgrounds, because if you shoot, you understand the closer you get to your subject with a lens that's not fast enough, you can blur out the background behind it. And that's what this will definitely do. The image quality off the lens, is phenomenal. And that adds to the ability of what the 102 megapixel sensor can do. So if you're into commercial photography, if you're into fashion photography, which I do like doing fashion photography when I can do it, if you're into portraiture work and things like that, this camera is for you. Yeah, I know it has a fixed focal length on it, but because of the size of that sensor, you can do some serious work with cropping in and cropping down to what you want that image to look like when you're taking it, because of the megapixels you still have left. So when it comes to, looking for gear for what you do, who is the GFX 100 RF is for? Well, if you're already a GFX shooter, it's a no-brainer for me to have gotten this camera and feel way more comfortable taking this camera out for its price point than taking out the GFX 100 II I have, which is 2 to 3 grand more than this without a lens. So the fact that this is under 5 grand is great. The fact that it is an all-in-one point and shoot camera is great. The build quality is great. It gives me the ability to do what I would want to do with the GFX 100 without the fear of having something that more expensive out and that more bigger, clumsier setup with that, because the lenses for the GFX are not small. Even the 53.5 that I have to shoot with that, if I did want to go out and shoot the way I shoot this now, the way I shot the GFX 50R, it's still made for a very big, cumbersome setup, kit, if you will. This is none of that, but it gives me all of the beautifulness of that sensor with a fantastic lens on the front of it. And again, if you do shoot medium format now and want to have something to go out with that's even more compact, but just as good on image quality and detail and so forth, and what this camera can do for you with cropping and so forth, this camera's for you. If you shoot fashion, portraiture, if you shoot commercial stuff and you need something high megapixel that you can put on a sensor and do things, the aspect ratios on this, although some folks feel the dial is gimmicky, and they may be right about that, what that does though is very powerful, giving me the ability to switch aspect ratios on the fly. The JPEGs are that much bigger, so the JPEGs are that much more easier to work with if I did need to do some things with it. The fact that I can bring the images, the raw images, into Capture One and keep the aspect ratio on there based on me hitting that setting of keeping adjustments from a photo, that's also phenomenal, because I don't have to worry about bringing that in and then not seeing how I shot that originally. Now, I do know that the only way to do that is to have this in JPEG and RAW. Some people might not like that. That is something I've had to do with other Fuji cameras, so that wasn't new to me. If Fuji decides to do a firmware update where you can do it in RAW and not have to have the camera in RAW and JPEG, great. So that's how I would use this camera, and that's who I think this camera is for. When it comes to gear again, and how I want to go over it now on the channel is, let's just talk about, you know, the gear you have and who you think it might be for based on use, or how you think it might work for you based on use. It's not always about a price thing, which a lot of people tend to focus on. All gear is expensive. From the Nikon Z8 I have, expensive without a lens. For the Leica gear that I have and people have, expensive. Sony gear, expensive. Gear is expensive. So let's not focus on the cost of the gear. Let's focus on the use of the gear and knowing that, is it right for me? Is it a right piece of gear for me to use to get the content I want to get? So let's go forward in that discussion with the gear section going forward. Not just talking about it. Now, when it comes to street, people have asked if this camera can be used for street or does it make sense? Yes, it does. Any camera could be used for street. It all depends on the person using it. If you want to use this camera for street, which I plan on doing, then why wouldn't you? Why would you let somebody stop you from using your gear the way you want to use it? And that's really what's important. Use your gear the way you want. Just make sure you understand why you got it in the first place and what your intentions were with it in the first place. And you will get out of it exactly what you were hoping to get, because you'll be focused on, well, why did I get this in the first place, right? So there you go, guys. And with every section of the podcast, I always make sure I ask you guys, you know, go in the comments and put your comments in there, negative or positive. Get the comments going so that we can communicate, so that we can talk about it. And, you know, I don't have no issue, again, if you want to do a live session and discuss things live, we can do that too. I really want to grow the podcast into something that's beneficial to the community and what we discuss in and around photography, not just street photography now. So with that, I normally do a Q&A question that I ask you guys and have you think about and so forth. We're going to hold on that to see if that's something you guys truly still want. Maybe that's something that would be better suited if this was live. So we will do that going forward as a live. So for right now, that is everything I wanted to go through. I know I said it was going to be quick, but that is everything I want to go through for the podcast today. And again, I look forward to you guys throwing your comments down there on what you would like to see. Would you like to see this go live? How do you think about the changes I want to make in some of the sections? And then we'll look to have the next podcast reflect that. So you guys enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you on the next cast.